Starting one's own business is the dream of many young and creative intellectuals. To help university students prepare to do just that, changes to the school system are being made. Some students can now leave university for up to 2 years to work on setting up their own business. Reporter Kwon Soa went out to see how these young people are utilizing the new system. From the social perception of people starting up their own businesses and getting seed money, to how starting up a business is a trustworthy alternative for creating more jobs, this report gave us a chance to look back on the various aspects of establishing one's own company. On Tuesday, an interpellation session was held at the National Assembly, and it focused on the economy. Our National Assembly Correspondent Ji Myung-kil gave us a sense of the atmosphere and went over the issues being discussed. President Park Geun-hye recently pointed out that regulations were deteriorating South Korea's economic base. A lot of talk went back and forth over the government's deregulation drive. We also got a chance to hear about the government's perspective on this year's personal data leaks and the nation's household debt problem.
Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
The top nuclear envoys of South Korea, the United States, and Japan met for talks on April 7th in Washington, D.C. Many were wondering how the talks will unfold as the situation on the Korean peninsula is changing at a fast pace due to North Korea's recent provocations and nuclear test threats. Our Foreign Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee told us what went on during the talks. The three sides agreed to strengthen joint measures against further provocations out of North Korea. There were also talks on bringing the North back into the six-party talks. Our minds are worn out by the hustle and bustle of our jam-packed lives, and there's someone who thinks it's important for us to take breaks. It's Arirang TV's cultural correspondent, Park Ji-won. She is always present when there is an event involving music or the arts. This time she introduces the essence of the royal silk flower collection of the Joseon Dynasty, which is finally seeing the light once again after 2 centuries. The National Palace Museum here in Seoul is a place where they exhibit palace artifacts. Today, Ji-won will go on a journey back in time.
안녕하세요. 저희 아리랑 TV에서 왔거든요. 오늘 하려고 한 건 11시 기자 간담회 하고 황수로 선생님하고 잠깐 커멘트 따고 작품 저희 촬영.
The first thing that greets Ji-won is a bountiful feast filled with all sorts of delicacies, beautiful flowers, and elegant butterflies. But all of them have a hidden secret. All of them are royal silk flowers. In the past, artificial flowers were made using silk and natural fibers to be used as decorations for the royal court's banquets and ceremonies. This is the venue where the exhibition for the royal silk flowers is being held. Ji-won can't take her eyes off of them. And in the end, she says,
진짜 꽃 같죠. 안에 보니까 굉장히 화려하더라고요.
그래요?
정말 저희가 전에 하나 전시된 거 저 봤었는데 이렇게 같이 묶어두니까 진짜 훨씬 멋있는 것 같아요. 저것도 되게 진짜 나무 같잖아요. 네. 이런 게 꽃이 전부 다 궁중에서는 실제 꽃을 쓸 수가 없었대요. 600년 동안. 그래서 조선에만 유일하게 있는 문화고 꽃 장식을 할 때 항상 이렇게 만들어서 했고 그걸 이제 이분이 물려받으신 거죠. 응조하고 싶은 거는 저는 아까 저기 앞에 있는 그 커다란 화분 2개 그것도 좋고요. 여기 있는 이것도 좋아요. 저는 이렇게 나무가 그대로 생생한 게 너무 예뻐요.
The flowers look like they would give off a scent.
Well, I've got to know Master Hwang Soo-ro, who has spent about 50 years of her life into studying and restoring this tradition, this dying royal tradition of fabricating artificial flowers. I've got to know her through a previous exhibition held last year, which featured about dozens of work by Korea's most prominent traditional Korean art craft artisans. And she was one of them, and I've got to see one piece of her work at the exhibition. And I was totally amazed how grand and majestic these flowers are. So I knew her. So when I got to know that there will be an exhibition about her work this spring, I thought this is a must-see exhibition. And I really wanted to cover this exhibition so that people can see the beauty of these royal silk flowers.
네, 지금부터 공중 전시 설명회를 시작하겠습니다. 아름다운 예술품입니다.
Master artisan Hwang Soo-ro is the person who made all the royal silk flowers by hand and recreated the whole atmosphere of the exhibition.
모든 자료가 모두 다 자연으로부터 옵니다. 붉은 꽃을 만들 때는 붉은 홍화의 색을, 노란 꽃을 만들 때는 노란 꽃의 열매의 색깔을 전부 다 자연색으로부터 축출을 해서 만드는 그야말로 자연에 피어있는 꽃의 빛깔과 똑같은 그는 빛을 내는 게 가장 중요했고요.
They say what you know is what you see. Ji-won sees the exhibitions once again under the direction of master artisan Hwang. The first includes the exhibition of a banquet from 1829, which was held to celebrate the 30th anniversary of King Sunjo's accession to the throne. The revival of the banquet was made possible as this time period in the Joseon Dynasty had the most records about royal silk flowers. Ji-won's eyes sparkled as she learned new facts.
자, 여기는 이제 야진명입니다. 밤에 왕비가 주관해서 내외명부라든지 여성들을 초대해서 하는 야진장, 밤에 벌려지는 만찬 파티입니다.
The king held banquets during the day, and the queen was in charge of the banquet in the evening. And thus, the queen's banquet is more extravagant and majestic than that of the king's. The colors of the flowers and the fruits are dyed depending on when the flowers bloom and fall during the 4 seasons. So the creation of the royal silk flowers took as little as a couple of months or as long as several years. Seeing the pieces that took long hours and hard work to make, Ji-won and other press members could only stand in silence, listening to what the master artisan was saying.
The historical records show that these 2 royal banquets spent so much money on fabricating these flowers. Each banquet was decorated with 5,000 to 6,000 flowers, and that cost about $200,000 in today's terms. So you can imagine how extravagant and majestic at the same time these flowers were, and how much they loved to see flowers at their parties.
The master artisan spent 50 years recreating the royal silk flowers. So Ji-won pays careful attention to the life story of master artisan Hwang Soo-ro.
저 이쪽 앞에서 저희도 간단하게 코멘트 한번 따겠습니다. 채화가 어떤 의미에서 왜 조선시대 궁에서만 발전하게 됐는지 간단하게 말씀해 주시고요. 채화가 600년 동안 내내 발달한 것인지 아니면 순조 때 와서 가장 만개한 것인지 그 부분도 살짝만 배경 설명.
네, 우리 민족은 태고적부터 꽃을 머리에 자마하는 그런 기록들이 많이 남아있고 그러나 한국 채화가 가장 아름답게 번창했던 시기는 조선 왕조 시대라고 볼 수 있는데 근데 특히 조선 시대 중에서도 이번에 재현하는 순조 시대, 순조 기축년 진년은 약 18세기 말인데 그때 우리 기록상 가장 장엄한 꽃 문화가 꽃피어져 있고 또 거기에 관한 체화도라든지 반차도가 지금도 조선 왕조 의궤에 많이 남아 있기 때문에 제가 그거를 바탕으로 해서 이번에 재현을 했었습니다.
제가 궁금한 게요. 이번 이렇게 지금 재현한 행사가 순조의 어떤 행사인가요? 이런 거 같은 경우는 보통 제사상이랑 다르잖아요.
아까 그 조선 시대는 남녀
네.
7세 부동석이었기 때문에 남녀가 같이 잔치를 하지 않고 남자는 왕을 중심으로 해서 외진년이라고 그래서 남자들만이 잔치를 낮에 했었고요.
The royal silk flowers are known to have been developed the most during the Joseon Dynasty, more so than any other time period. We can't help but wonder why.
Royal courts of the Joseon Dynasty never plucked any living flowers because they respected lives and they knew the preciousness of living things. And also these flowers were considered to be flowers that never died. So at the royal courts, these artificial flowers were used to decorate the royal events. And they also symbolized the eternity of its rule.
There was something else to enjoy at the exhibition. They are the works of the Legeron family, who made silk flowers used in the French royal court.
이렇게 찍어내는 거예요. 저희들 공중체하고 다른 점 중에 크게 다른 점 중에 하나가 이 부분하고 염색 부분인데요. 이분들은 이걸 찍어내고 저희는 가위로 오려내는 거예요. 그게 굉장히 차이가 있죠.
The colors and designs of the grass and flower petals were exquisite in color and shape. But there was something else that surprised Ji-won.
이거를 제가 프랑스 방문했을 때 보여줬더니 너무 깜짝 놀랐어요. 저희들하고 똑같잖아요.
Voilà. La seule différence, nous on a des boules rondes, elle a des demi.
유일하게 다른 점 우리는 반쪽이고 걔들은 동그랗다는 거예요. 그래서 똑같은 형태의 인두를 쓰니까 몇백 년의
The soil and the time periods were different, but the tools that were used to create the flowers were almost identical. Ji-won discovers something new every time she goes out to cover a story.
저런 깃털을 가지고 옷을 만드는.
아까 그 저분이 그 인두 비슷한 거 보여주셨을 때 계셨어요? 하나 따볼까요? 그러니까 요거 소개하고 꼬랑 뒷부분에 뭐 여기 한 편에서는 네 하면서 간단하게 Hello, I'm a reporter from Arirang TV. Enchanté. 저희 이거에 대해서 그 한국 거랑 되게 비슷한 부분이 많았잖아요. 그 부분에 대해서 간단하게 저희 지금 시작하면 네, 저희 잠깐만 기다려주세요. 아 제가 들게요. 제가 들고 약간 높이 들고요. Quelle est la ressemblance avec en Corée?
Juste la différence, c'est que, enfin, la différence qui est assez grande, c'est qu'elle est faite uniquement de la décoration, c'est-à-dire, et nous on est très folie.
뭐라고 하셨는지 정리해.
일단 그 한국 쪽 체화와 그다음에 자신들이 하는 이 조화 쪽이 비슷한 점이 많지만 이제 황수로 박사님 같은 경우는 좀 클래식한 그런 스타일을 유지를 하시는 거고 본인들은 의상이라든지 패션 쪽 관련해서 좀 더 발전이 된 케이스라고 이제
말씀 시작하실 때 그 방식이 비슷한 게 놀랐다 이런 말씀 하시지 않으셨어요?
예,
하셨죠? 네. 그 부분에 제가 대충 알아들었어요.
Floriste plumassier.
Well, it was interesting to see how these French flowers, the making process of these French flowers were almost the same with the Korean royal silk flowers. And Mr. Legeron, he was amazed himself to see how they used almost the same tools making these artificial flowers, despite the geographical difference of thousands of kilometers at the same early 19th century. So I thought it was really interesting. I thought I should interview him and put his soundbite to show the vivid explanation about the similarity of Western and Asian culture. 시작을 이거로 했다가 이거 하고 근데 저희가 그 프랑스 갔다 다시 이걸로 돌아와도 괜찮겠죠?
Ji-won is dazzled and touched by those royal silk flowers. She quickly records everything in one corner of the exhibition before she can forget the inspiration she received. Ji-won wraps up her coverage with her stand-up.
자신 있게 자.
다시 갈게요. The exhibition especially demonstrates how King Sunjo, who ruled the Korean peninsula in the early 19th century, celebrated his 40th birthday.
That afternoon, Ji-won is back at the office and busy wrapping up her article.
경복궁 조금 더 앞에 조금 더 길게 넘나요? Main royal
How can she deliver the touching emotions and warmth of the scene to the viewers? She concentrates on editing the footage.
왕과의 어떤 그런 부유함이나 우아함, 그 취향을 반영한다 이런 얘기거든요. 이 앞에 거 되게 예쁘지 않아요? 앞에 이런 게 풀 하나 넣고 이거 두 개 이어서 가면 안 돼요? The main royal palace of the Joseon Dynasty, which fits nicely with the museum's new exhibition that opens Tuesday.
Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won tells us more.
The National Palace Museum of Korea lies right next to Gyeongbokgung Palace.
Ji-won didn't try to deliver the extravagance of the royal silk flowers or the techniques required to make them.
But they are actually traditional royal silk flowers.
She tried to show the kind consideration of our ancestors who tried to refrain from imprisoning and holding back nature. This was one story where we could see the hard work and efforts of master artisans.
Who ruled the Korean peninsula in the early 19th century, celebrated his 40th birthday. Even for Koreans, it's not common to see some of great exhibitions that show the royal traditional Korean art crafts. So I thought it was a great chance for our viewers outside of Korea to be able to see and appreciate the beauty of traditional Korean art crafts. And she's a master. Like, she had this skill that was designated by the Korean government as important intangible cultural asset. So I wanted to show the lifelong commitment of her life into recreating and reviving this dying royal tradition.
The 45th anniversary, that's how old the internet is, and people discuss the future of where the internet and where this wired nation is headed.
Some say we are living through an IT revolution.
Things have been changed so rapidly. Smartphone industry is already saturated.
Hello, Professor.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. So we're talking 3G like yesterday, right? 3G was the best thing, but now it's 5G.
Yeah, 10-year span.
Right.
For each generation, we took 10 years. We are now starting a fourth generation, and we talk about fifth generation, and fifth generation will come in 7 years later.
Or earlier, right?
10 years.
Possibly. It's possible that it could even pull up the schedule, that it could happen earlier than anticipated.
Not possible.
Not possible.
Because the many companies should cooperate.
Oh, it's not a one-man operation.
Not one man. Some company can lead for the 5G technology, but
the trendsetters.
Yeah, trendsetter. So the Samsung and Google at the moment are trendsetter, but the other companies should follow, and that takes time.
Japanese companies, they've been sort of quiet as of late.
Quiet,
right?
but they are
They
very
refuse to
competitive.
die down and go away.
They are very competitive. For example, Sony and NTT Docomo is trying to recover to the former position as a world leader.
Regain their throne.
Yeah, regain.
One thing I do remember, and I do still notice about Japanese phones or anything Japanese, they always have their own style. They refuse to succumb to the outside trend. And they feel they can impose that on the rest of the world. Wow. Speaks volumes about the country's culture as well, right?
That's your culture.
Another topic that our viewers would probably be fascinated about, the IoT or Internet of Things. In that respect, who is the leader? Which company is a leader in the IoT trend? Google.
The Google is very fast mover.
They have very strong foresight. Yeah. When people say, they say, let's do it.
So, and the other company has no idea and has only confusion.
And doubts.
In doubt, and no decision, no money.
They want to see if it works out, if someone else does it, and then they follow.
So then there will be a kind of a 6 months gap between Google and other companies like Apple or Samsung.
By the time they realize it's too late.
Yeah, so the war is 6 months game. Once they are behind, 6 months late, then the game is over. So that's the idea.
There was a time when 6 months would have been a battle, not a war, but nowadays it's the beginning and the end of a campaign in this very tech-savvy realm that we live in today. We're going to talk to you a little bit further later on down in the studio, so I'll save some of the other juicy questions and possibly some more fascinating answers from you. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Today, we wish a very happy 45th birthday to the Internet.
Dr. Moon, it's great to have you back here. Welcome. Now, first off, let's first go over 4G. I think most of us have got 4G covered.
Japan and Korea are very eager to show their position as a fast mover and trendsetter in 5G. By having homepage, the one programmer can visit another programmer's homepage. Only 10% of our work, which is done in analog, is digitized. The trend is that it will be digitized. It will be connected to the server, and it will send the signal. 한 10분 내지 15분이면 좋은데 이렇게 이제 5, 6분, 6, 7분 하니까 상당히 항상 아쉽죠. 하고 싶은 말이 좀 남아 있고 잔영이 남아 있고 그게 방송의 그 특징이고 묘미라고 봐야 됩니다.
I think it's always more fun when you interview someone one-on-one in their own element instead of ours. That's just my personal theory and wishful thinking. Can't always be that way.